Shalom Aleichem, welcome to Tanya Outside In, Perek Vav. So just before we jump into Perek Vav, let's just do a very quick recap of chapter 4 and 5. Chapter 4 is about mitzvahs, be'ikah. Chapter 5 is about limud Torah. So the basic takeaway from chapter Daled, chapter 4, on one leg, is that when you do a mitzvah, you become surrounded by the mitzvah, so to speak. You energize the mitzvah. It's like, in a sense, you wear the mitzvah like a talus. Talus is the symbol of this idea. But the mitzvah is energized through you, meaning there's a certain action that we talk of, which is the mitzvah with all its details and parameters. And you cause it to come alive. Your energy becomes enclosed in the time and the space and the matter of the mitzvah, and you cause it to come alive, so to speak. So on a conceptual sense, that means you become enclosed within the mitzvah, like a talus. That's a very deep connection.
Can I share a mashal that I think might make sense for this?
Yeah, please.
That we said that behavior is levushim. Your levushim are your behavior. Mitzvahs are Hashem's behavior.
Yes.
So you're essentially putting on Hashem's clothes. You're becoming the energy that wears Hashem's clothes, allows it to come into being.
Absolutely. Just like your clothes. See my clothes right now, my clothes are moving, yeah? That's because I'm inside them, moving them. That's exactly the idea, is the mitzvahs are Hashem's behavior. The mitzvahs are his actions, they're his speech, and they're his thoughts. Learning Torah. So whenever we do a mitzvah or we say a mitzvah like Kriya Shema, we do a mitzvah al pi Maisa, we do a mitzvah al pi Dibur, or we do a mitzvah al pi Machshava. In any one of those cases, we are causing, so to speak, to come to life the Ratzon Hashem, or so to speak, Hashem's behavior. So we become enclosed in his mitzvah, and him and his mitzvah is one. So the idea of a mitzvah is that your soul becomes enclosed in the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's a mitzvah. Now, Talmud Torah, really Yediyas Torah, is a little different. It has an extra dimension to it. So we explained that when you understand something, the word in English as well is to grasp. You grasp an idea. In Hebrew, it's called to be masig. You grasp an idea, just like you grasp an object. So I'm grasping my cup right now, yeah? Grasping means that you get your head around a certain idea. And that's what we say. We say, I can't quite get my head around that. That's the what's the word? That alludes to this idea. So grasping something intellectually in your mind means basically you see where it begins, you see where it ends. You've got it in your mind, okay? So that's the opposite of mitzvahs, because mitzvahs, we said, you become enclosed within the mitzvah. By learning Torah, there's a concept of the Torah becoming enclosed within your mind. Now, also, by learning Torah, just in the act of learning, when you start to understand something and you go deeper into the idea as well, you become enveloped in the idea. That's another idiom that we use, to be enveloped within an idea, to be drowning in a subject. So as we understand it, we get our head around it. And as we delve deeper into it, we become immersed in the idea. Like, look at that guy. He looks like he's immersed in his thoughts. You become immersed in the idea. So just in the avodah of learning Torah, there's what's called makif and mukaf, meaning that Hashem becomes internal to you. Him and his Torah are one. So you ingest Hashem. That's why learning Torah is called mazon and lechem. Just like you eat food and it becomes part of your body, it's transformed into blood and flesh. So too, when you learn Torah, it becomes a part of the nefesh hamaskeles, part of the intelligent soul. And plus, it's also a mitzvah. So it has that idea of surrounding as well. So that's the milah of learning Torah. There's other milahs as well, but that's what he says in Perek 5, that the milah of learning Torah is, unlike mitzvahs that are just a makif, they just surround the soul. Torah also does that, but it has an extra dimension of the idea of being enclosed. The Torah becomes enclosed within the soul, it becomes internal to the soul digests it. It's like that's the message of Sukkot, is you sit in the sukkah, and Pesach is you eat matzah. That's the difference between that. That's hinting to this idea of the fact of being surrounded by a mitzvah and then ingesting the Torah, actually bringing it into the body, and the body processing it and converting it into the actual goof itself. Okay, so that's the idea of doing mitzvahs and learning Torah. Okay.
How is it possible to be able to wrap our heads around an idea in Torah? Well, like other facts about the universe, or other knowledge, which are limited. You can understand the beginning and the end, but with regards to Hakadosh Baruch Hu and His Torah, how is it possible to be able to fully wrap your head around it, like the mashal you gave last time? Maybe we could put a hand. It's like touching a basketball. We can partially get a bit around it, but how can we fully comprehend anything in Torah?
Well, that's a great question, and the fact is that is the nace of Torah. The fact that you're going to be putting on tefillin tomorrow morning, and you've got the boxes that are exactly according to the halacha, with the right parshas. You're going to do it at the right time. You're going to put it at the right place of your arm. You're going to say the bracha. That is Ratzon Hashem. Now, you couldn't put Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't put tefillin on better than you. He might have a whole different experience while he's doing it. In fact, he would have. But the actual Ma'aser Mitzvah, you realize that? It's binary. It's just, did you do it, yes or no? There's b'diavad, but there's not madregas to doing it. If you did it b'diavad, you did it. It's just b'diavad, but you still did it. So in doing mitzvahs, there's absolutely a definite, so to speak, not grasping, but there's a definite end. And that's so too with Torah. You can understand the Torah. You can understand that, again, it goes infinitely deep. So there's Pardes, and then there's Madregas and Madregas. But for what you're understanding right now is you've understood it. And to that level that you've understood it according to your mental abilities, you have ingested the Ribbono Shel Olam, so to speak. So there is endless levels, but that is the miracle of the Torah, is that you can actually grasp it. There is what's called Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod. And you can actually get your head around it. So it's a good question, but it's the miracle of the Torah that it can actually be understood by a human being. That's the whole point of it.
I'm not sure what the advantage of us having mazon, food for your neshama and olam haba. I don't really know why we need that, but is that only if you learned it, grasped it, and then reviewed it enough times that it becomes integrated into your brain? Or is it enough to get it once? I got it, and go weiter?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I would think, based on what we said, it has to become part of the framework of your brain.
I would also assume that as well, but I've heard other things as well, but I don't know the answer to the question.
The Baal HaTanya himself says that anything you see, even once without understanding it, also is something you can learn in Olam Haba.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means.
And then I've heard other people say as well that it's only the stuff that you know Baal Peh that you get to learn Olam Haba. So I don't know, and I don't think anybody else really knows as well. But either you should learn everything. If you're going to learn it, you should learn it properly anyway. I just realized this week is that what's the 48th way of the 48 ways? You know the 48 ways in Pirkei Avos? What's the final one? Anyone remembers? A minute.
In Pirkei Avos, right?
Yeah, the 48 way. The last one's ha'omer davar b'shem oimroi. Say it in the name of the person you heard it from. Yeah, that's the last one. It's kind of weird. So the Pashup Pshat is it's about humility, whatever. But then he says something interesting. He says, anybody who says a name in the name, something in the name of the one who said it, maybe geula l'olam. He brings redemption to the world. He brings geula to the olam. He only brings redemption to the world, meaning that isn't the geula. The geula of the idea is when you stop quoting it. You could mention who you heard it in the name of, but quoting it means I heard this. When you never quote your third grade maths teacher when you tell somebody that 5 times 5 equals 25. Why wouldn't you quote them? Because that's you. You know that's with das. That's become part of who you are. So the whole point of knowledge is to get to the place where you're not quoting it anymore. You can say it as a courtesy, as a humility in the name of someone, but it's not that you're quoting it. It's you. It's how you understand reality. That's the last of the 48 ways. And that's the keyum of the 48 ways is you're not quoting the 48 ways. This is how I understand reality. This is how it is. I heard it from Pirkei Avos. I heard it. I learned it from the Tana. But this is how I understand reality. So that's whenever we learn anything, if it's worth learning, it's worth identifying with, merging with, and understanding it to a point where it becomes one with you anyway. And that the truth is, the way I understand it is the only way that information will make a difference to anybody else, of other yourself, is when you know things on that level. And when you know things on that level, when you look at other things that are not related, so to speak, that part of you, so to speak, is given birth. It's given birth. It gives birth through the other things that you're learning. When it's you, when you've understood something so deeply that you and that thing have become one, now it's like it's not just you learning the new thing. You and that thing before have become one. So it's you and that thing now learning the new thing, if you understand. And now through the words of the new thing, that thing that you learned previously is now coming to life in a whole different way. So everything becomes new because it's not you, you're different now. You're more. You with me? Okay. Perek Vav. So now it makes a lot of sense what we're going to do now because we've spoken of doing mitzvahs, yeah? Now the Rebbe is going to talk about doing other stuff. Not doing aveiros, doing other stuff. Reality divides into 3 things, yeah? There's what's asa, there's what's mutter, and there's what's mitzvah. Okay? Forbidden, permitted, and mitzvah. Don't know translation for that. Okay? So before we start talking about doing stuff that's forbidden, the Rebbe wants to talk about doing stuff that's permissible. How does that figure? If you're becoming enclosed in God when you do a mitzvah, what's happening to you when you're eating breakfast on a Tuesday morning? Good question, huh?
Aren't there mitzvahs for every kind of activity in life, like even like tying your shoelaces and making brachas, which perhaps elevate these mundane activities?
So what about if you're this person is now just eating breakfast on a Tuesday morning, and he's doing it so that he's got energy to go to work and earn some money, and he's not particularly bothered about Misa. He's not doing it. He's not doing an aveira, but he's just being a normal human being. He's just eating breakfast. He's gone bowling to a kosher place. He's just going bowling. He didn't really need to do that. Didn't need the break. He's just going for a game of bowling. Nothing wrong intrinsically about that. It's not like he's involved in idolatry or forbidden relations. Just having a game of pool. What's happening now? So
didn't the Balatanya mention earlier that the idea of Bittul Torah, that if you're involved in Bittul Torah, then you're Russia.
That's actually only for somebody who's not an Amma Oretz. For an Amma Oretz, Bittul Torah is not. If a person doesn't know how to learn Torah, if you're a Talmud Chacham like yourself, then you have an Issa Bittul Torah. If you don't know how to learn Torah, if you say Tehillim whatever, but it's not an Issa like it is by a Talmud Chacham who should be talking Torah. Anyway, not that it's good, but what you're saying is right. Really, the world of permissible is like it's either a mitzvah or an avera, but we're painting a picture now where there's such an idea of doing something that is permissible and not for a negative reason, not for a positive reason. You're just doing something powerful. Okay, so he's going to explain what happens. And we're also going to talk, by the way, on the side point is the mechanics of the Nefesh Bahamis. We're going to say some amazing things, and you're going to see how this book works in a certain way, because the Rebbe says things that literally I've read books on. In one thing, he says it in 2 words that I've read books on. If you've read these books, you'll realize that he covered everything in 2 words. So we'll see that in a few moments, actually. We'll see. Let's see. This opposite this. We've just been speaking. We're in Perek Vav, which is page Yud. We've just been speaking about when you do mitzvahs. Yeah, the world of Kedusha with your Nefesh Lakis and the Nefesh Maskeles, etc. The intellectual soul, the godly soul. Now, this opposite this, yeah, Zeh Asa Lakim. Hashem made everything with opposites, yeah. Ki Kamoi Shenefesh Lakis, Klulam Esa Spheres Kedoshas, just like the godly soul is composed of 10 holy spheres, and is enclosed those 10 bechinas, which we said are Seichel Midas, Chochma Bina Das, and then the 7 Midas, Chesed, Gevur, Tefes, Netzach, Yisod, Malchus. That's what the soul is made of, so to speak. Yeah, it's made of an intellect and it's made of emotions. Those 2 halakim, so to speak, becoming clothed in thought, speech, and action of Torah and mitzvahs. Now, he talks about the Esa Spheres Kedoshas, the 10 holy spheres, the very mechanics, the very structure of the holy soul, of the godly soul, is called spheres. It's actually interesting because it's not really called spheres, it's called bechinas and koiches. But he uses the word spheres here to be madgish, to emphasize the point. Spheres always work interdependently. The whole concept of the Esa spheres is what we call in Kabbalah a partzuf. A partzuf means you can't be missing one of them. They all work interdependently. It's a completely cohesive, interdependent unit made of 10 functions, but they all work humbly and dependently. So humbly and interdependently. Now listen to this. Kach, hanefesh de sitra achra, maklipas noiga. The nefesh of the sitra achra that comes from klipas noiga, not from klipas tameas, which is what we call the animal soul. Hamlubeshes bedam ha'adam, that is enclosed within the blood of man. Like we spoke about battery acid, how that contains the electric charge. So the electric charge is almost physical. I mean, it lives in a physical liquid. Yeah. So too, this nefesh is also almost physical, and therefore it lives in the actual blood. Kulula me'esa kisunda masavusa. This is the code word here. The code words. It is enclosed in the 10 crowns of impurity. He didn't call them spheres. He called them the 10 kisunda masavusa, the 10 crowns of impurity, or the 10 crowns of filth, however you want to define that. Why does he talk about crowns? Why didn't he call them the 10 unholy spheres? Shalom Eliezer. Why did he call them the 10 kissim de masavusa, the 10 crowns of impurity? Gabriel knows, but I want to say the This is so holy. Not only is this amazing, what we're going to learn in a second, but I want you to just to appreciate how the Tanya is written, because the Tanya was written mamash as a Torah shebichsav, and it got given with the Torah shebal peh. So he hid in these 2-3 words, Esa kissing masavusa, a huge inyan that you would never know if your Rav didn't explain it to you. But once you know it, every time you see these 2 words, the whole inyan comes back into your head. And then let's explain the inyan. The inyan is that just like in holiness, in kedusha, there's achdus, because there's humility. For achdus to take place, there has to be humility. In the lashon of our world, that's called interdependent. That's achdus. Achdus means you're interdependent, meaning I have what to give, and I know that I also have what to receive. I'm not an island unto myself. That's called humility. I'm here to give and I'm here to receive. I'm just part of the team. That's called kadosh. The whole structure of the nefesh bahamis, which is klipa, is independent. The reason why it's called 10 impure crowns, because crowns is the idea of a malchus. Yeah, a malchus is like a kingdom, a kingdom, yeah? It's only a very modern phenomena that there's been any kind of dialogue between kingdoms. Yeah, the concept of a kingdom is that I'm my kingdom, I will use you if I can get something out of you, or I will fight you if I can't, or whatever it is. But we're 2 completely independent, separate entities. So he defines the structure of the Nefesh Bahamis as 10 impure crowns, meaning the very structure of your lower animal side is fragmented and independent, which means unlike the Nefesh Rakis that looks at the world as a big whole, the Nefesh Bahamis looks at the world as a fragmented, disjointed, antagonistic, competitive other, and everything's something else. It doesn't put all the dots together. It doesn't see things together, and that's why it says in the Haggadah the definition of a Rasha is Hayotzi Esatzmo min haklal. He takes himself out of the klal, whereas Kedusha sees itself in context of the klal. Being holy means you see yourself as a part of the system, not as a complete system unto yourself. And why is that? Because the very structure of your holy soul is an interdependent system. The very structure of your animal soul is an independent system. Isn't that amazing? And the Rebbe gives all of that to you in 2 words. Kissen de Masavusa, maybe 3 words. Esa kissen de Masavusa. So now when you read through this Sefer next time, you can chazar that entire thing that we just said in those 3 words. That's how this Sefer works. It's really I don't know what's more important, the lesson we learned, or to just see how this Sefer works. It's like when a massive Talmud, like, you know, they spoke about the Vilna Gaon at the end of his life. The Vilna Gaon only learned Chumash at the end of his life from a Sefer Torah. You've heard that before? Because he knew Kol Torah Kuloi, so he could chazar the entire Torah by reading the Sefer Torah with all the tagim and with all the suras oisias and v'chulei v'chulei. And he was experiencing the entire Shebal Peh. So too, the way this Sefer works is that you get the concept, you have to chazar the concept, get it clear, and then you chazar the Sefer, and you do a chazar on the entire concept very quickly. So I don't know what's more important right now, but we'll see that again and again in the Sefer. But this is a very profound expression of that. So Shehein Sheva Midas Ros. So what are these 10 crowns. And again, we're going to see it again, exactly the same thing again. Listen to this.
Can I ask, these elements there to the Esther Kise.
Wait, speak loud. I have some in my office. I have Eliezer in my office.
The thing we just said, the three, whatever.
The 10 crowns, yeah?
Yeah, so is there what's the counterpart in Kedusha? Does he have
The 10 spheres.
But that's it?
The 10 spheres, that's why they're called spheres, because spheres work as an interdependent structure. That's what spheres are. That's called a partsuf. And the 10 impure crowns mean that they work in a fragmented way. And that is the cause of the animal soul's perspective on reality. The reason why you look at the world, and we don't forget, we are primarily experiencing reality through the eyes of the animal soul, unless you're a tzaddik. But a regular Jew is looking at the world through the eyes of the animal soul, generally. That means we are seeing the world in a fragmented way. We don't see it all come together. That's why we get upset when someone parks in our parking spot. If you were connected to the klal, you would understand that that person needs to be in your parking spot right now, and there's nothing to get upset about. But because we're looking through the eyes of the animal soul, when somebody's in your parking spot, like you're like, why are you in my parking spot? That's my parking spot. Who are you? We're not one. We're not part of the big system. There's me, there's you, there's him, there's her. That's our outlook on that's our lower outlook on reality, and that is a product of the structure of the soul. Okay?
Where's the moon and the talking?
Not sure in this context. Okay, so Shein Sheva, what are these 10 powers? Again, listen to what he does here, exactly the same thing. Shein Sheva Midas Ros, Habos Ma'abi Yasoidas Roim Hanal. That is the 7 evil midas, the 7 evil emotions that come from the 4 evil is the wrong word, yeah. Selfish is probably the best thing. So the 7 selfish emotions that come from the 4 elements like fire, wind, earth, water, whatever. Hanal v'sheva v'seichel hamoilidan. And the intellect that gives birth to them, that is the Chochmah, Bina, and Das. Now, if you just want to quickly reference this, just interesting, if you turn back to page Zion, yeah, Perek Gimel, he says here, a few lines down, Esser spheres elyonas, shenshnash mehem, and nechlach and shtay. They're divided into 2. Shen shloish imois v'sheva kfulois. Chochmah bina das, and then the 7 midas. Over here, he says the 7 midas and the moichin. By the nefesh of the keys, he said moichin and then midas, intellect and emotions. By the nefesh of bamis, he said emotions and intellect. He switches the order. Again, you would never, you just read that and you might notice, or you wouldn't know, but this is the key to understanding how these two, another deep insight in how these two energies function, how these two souls function. See, he says that the midas are born, the emotions are born from the intellect. Now, as we've said many times before, you can't have feelings about something that you don't know about. If you haven't heard about what's going on in Tasmania right now, then you won't have any emotions towards it. Once you learn about the horrific things that are going on in Tasmania, I just made this up, yeah, now you start having emotions towards it. So that is what we refer to as emotions are born from intellect. In every situation, if you don't know about it, you don't have emotions towards it. Now, there is the idea of physiological feelings if you didn't eat correctly or whatever. Those aren't emotions. Those aren't responses to. Those are just physical. Well, they are really emotions. I'm not going to get into that. But the idea is that always emotions are born from intellect. Now, so emotions are called children and intellect are called parents. But now listen to this. What happens once they're born? We know that emotions are born from intellect, just as children are born from parents. But you go into any given house on your block where you've got a family, parents and children, and tell me if the relationship between the parents and children is the same in every house. And the answer is obviously it isn't. So there's two basic relationships between the parents and the children and everything in between. There's the holy relationship, and then there's the unholy relationship. You could call it the house where there's education and the house where the kids are spoiled. This is amazing, an amazing way of understanding this. I heard this from Shais Tao, that in the holy house, there's what's called chinuch. The children, as normal, are born from the parents. And now the parents guide and what's the word? Raise the children. They raise the children. They raise them. That's what it means to raise children. They raise them. Yeah. So the parents are there. That's called chinuch, where the parents are guiding and raising the children. They're helping the children become Givoldic. Okay? That's the holy house. So what's the unholy house? The unholy house is where the kids are spoiled. What does that mean? It's such a horrible word, that it's spoiled, like bad milk. Spoiled means that the kids are using the parents. They've hijacked the parents, and they are now using the parents to fulfill their personal agenda. That's the unholy house. So the holy house, the parents give birth to the children, like in every house. The parents give birth to the children, and now the parents are guiding and raising the children. In the unholy house, the parents give birth to the children, as usual, but now the children hijack the koiches of the parents, and the parents become, so to speak, like a slave to the children. Everyone's with me? We got the mashal. Now, this explains why the Alter Rebbe said in chapter 3, first, when he's talking about the godly soul, first the intellect and then the emotions. And in chapter 6, he said first the emotions and then the intellect. Meaning that in the godly soul, it's primarily intelligent, meaning that the intellect guides and raises the emotions. In the human soul, in the animal soul, the emotions hijack the intellect and use the intellect to get their own selfish way, or to get their own immature, selfish needs fulfilled.
That answers Eliezer's question of Amuna and Betachin. Amuna is Merlashin, Ba'omein Asadasta, to educate, to raise. So that's Amuna is the Nefesh Elokis teaching the Nefesh HaBahamis to believe in something it really doesn't believe in.
Very good. That's what you're saying there is exactly that is our relationship with our Nefesh HaBahamis. We are there to raise the Nefesh HaBahamis. We are there to train the Nefesh HaBahamis like a pet, mamash like a pet. Yeah, you're meant to train it. And you know what the primary training is for the Nefesh HaBahamis that I've learned? What's the Ikka training that you can, the Ikka training for the Nefesh HaBahamis?
To push off.
What?
To push off, to delay.
Well, okay. And also,
Making and breaking promises.
Well, that's really what Michael was saying. That is true. That really is probably more true what I was going to say. But on a higher level, once you're holding there, that's really that's like taming the beast. Yeah, that's just making it. That's domesticating it. But how do you turn it into an animal that can do tricks for you? There's just a domesticated dog, and then there's the special trick. You know, the dog that can do all the funky stuff. Yeah. The Ica, so I appreciate that. So the way of getting the domesticating the animal is through making and keeping promises, which is basically what Michael was saying. The way of turning it into an animal that can actually do tricks for you, meaning can actually help you. He's not just a fat pet sitting around, but he's actually a help to you, is tefillah and dafka shacharis. The way that the Rayats, the previous Rebbe, Friediger Rebbe, would explain that is that when you're davening, yeah, it's, so to speak, like the Nefesh of Bahamas is sitting there watching. And if you daven properly, you actually give the Nefesh of Bahamas a tam for tefillah. So when you, for example, when you watch Rav Shimon Zilberberg daven, yeah, his Nefesh of Bahamas is 100% invested in that davening. Yeah, that is not just the Nefesh Elokis davening. That is a Nefesh of Bahamas davening his heart out, yeah? Because he's davened so much that he's given the Nefesh of Bahamas a time of tefillah. And so he's davening, that's b'chol levavacha, b'shtei yitzurecha. So we can, it's kind of like fake it till you make it. Yeah, like we know, first things first is stop with the shtuyot and spend at least 25 minutes to half an hour davening Pesukah Zimra. That's like foundation of Yiddishkeit. There is, in my opinion, literally Yiddishkeit does not begin until you're at least investing 25 minutes in Pesukah Zimra. Then you really start drafting you can really start drafting the Nefesh of the Nefesh of Bahamas into it, and know what the words are. You daven from the art scroll, you know, the art scroll with the interlinear thing, or go through, work it out, but know what you're saying and really turn it into an avoider. And you'll see that eventually it gets to the point where when something happens and you can't daven properly, it's annoying. You're like, I just can't. Today I've got a job and there's no way that I can't just not daven a quick shachris. And you're like, wow. Okay, tomorrow we'll work it out. As opposed to the opposite where, there's no tachnan. Oh, Hashem. When you get to this point, you're like, there's no tachnan? What? You're sure? And you're like working it out that you can have tachnan. Because you're into it, you know? Imagine such a thing where somebody claps and says tachnan, and you hear that someone claps, and they go, you scud out, and everyone's like, oh. Imagine.
I'm not makabel.
You're not makabel? It's true. Imagine. I mean,
why tefillah over doing a mitzvah really, really intensely with your body?
Because tefillah, no, it's a good question, and there probably isn't a chiluk, but tefillah lends itself to intensity. A mitzvah doesn't necessarily lend itself to intensity, and the mitzvah is also the Nefesh of Bahamas is more involved in the mitzvah, actually, like doing the actual Ma'aser mitzvah. Whereas with tefillah, the Nefesh of Bahamas is more sitting at the sideline and kind of just sitting there, kind of like twiddling his thumbs. It's like what Shlomo Carlebach used to say. He said, you can sit next to somebody learning Torah for hours and hours, and it won't do anything. If you're sitting next to someone davening, yeah, eventually you're going to start davening as well. It's like this, it lends itself to this, it really lends itself to this avodah, because it also has a pleasure to it as well, like the pleasure of good poetry, or the lahavdil, or the pleasure of understanding something. There's a pleasure in that. The pleasure of a mitzvah is not, it's not available in the same way as in tefillah. You know what I mean?
Maybe it's because it's like you said, it's an emotion. It's tefillah shebalev, avodah shebalev. It's emotions, and the body can speak the language of emotions. The body cannot speak the language of the brain. It's two different things. It has to go through the emotions to influence the body.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, let's just go a little bit further and we'll finish. Okay, so the Nefesh of Bahamas is made of the Eser Kisim de Masavusa, the 10 impure crowns, which we explained what that means. And then we said that that is divided, just like in the godly soul, into the three intellectual faculties and the 7 emotional faculties. But in the Nefesh Bahamis, the emotional faculties come before the intellectual faculties because it's primarily an emotional being, like an animal, like a child. And then he says, the Seichel Makor Hamidus. They are the Makor of the Midas, the source of the Midas. And then he says something very deep. The Midas, the emotions, are commensurate with the Seichel. Lefi, I'll explain what that means. Because a child longs for and loves simple, silly things that are worthless. Because its mind is too small, too short to grasp bigger, more valuable things. So this is the last idea for today, is that a child is into his toys and cluffing, stickers, yeah? Now, as that child matures, by the time he's 15, he's not into stickers and, you know, Tonka toys. He's now into iPhones and, you know, sneakers. By the time he's 25, he's into, you know, Rolex watches and fast cars. By the time he's 45, he's into property and, you know, yachts if he got there, or aeroplanes, whatever it is, yeah? What happened? Because this person, we're discussing right now a very natural person, a guy who went with the flow. How comes he's not still into Tonka toys and stickers by the time he's 45? He didn't sit there and try and make himself appreciate Bugattis and Patek Philippe watches. He just ended up realizing that a Bugatti is just much more, is worth much more, is more valuable than a toy car. So that's called Lefi Erech HaSeichel, meaning in the godly soul, as in the Holy Family, when the parents are educating or being machanech the children, the godly soul is being machanech the midas to love and fear God, and it goes up in levels and levels, etc. In the Nefesh HaBahamis, it doesn't work like that. The brain is not actively manipulating or moving the emotions. What happens is, as you spend time in this world, you learn new things, and the brain also becomes more sophisticated and understands things on a slightly deeper level. So just the more time you spend in this world, the more you realize that a Bugatti is more valuable than a toy car. You didn't do anything for that. That just was a product of being in the world. So just like your mind expanded, so to speak, from toy cars to Ferraris, so too your emotions expand from toy cars to Ferraris. That's called Lefi Erech HaSeichel, meaning that the emotions are Lefi Erech HaSeichel. They're commensurate with the Seichel. They're not being educated and elevated by the Seichel. They're just growing with the Seichel, commensurate with the Seichel. And that's another very important understanding of how the Nefesh Bahamis works. Okay, so we're finished now, but let's just quickly recap. So we said that the Nefesh Bahamis is the structure, its very structure is fragmented and isolated and independent. And that gives rise to an egoic outlook on reality, meaning everything is a fragmented and separate thing. And it's either there to help me or to go against me, but it's all about me and everything's separate. Yeah, that's the Russians. It says that's in a cloud. It takes itself out of the cloud. So number one, the very structure of the Nefesh Bahamis is fragmented. Okay. Number two, the difference between the Nefesh HaBahamis and the Nefesh HaLakis is that in the Nefesh HaLakis, the intellect is guiding and elevating the emotions. And in the Nefesh HaBahamis, the emotions are hijacking the intellect and using the intellect to fulfill its own selfish purposes and immature purposes. And then we learned a more technical nuance in that the relationship is really one of that it's a commensurate relationship. It's called Lefi Erech, that as the mind naturally expands from just taking in more information, experiencing more things, and also maybe physiological developments in the mind, biological developments in the mind, the emotions expand in that sense and move from things that are without value, like lollipops, to things that are with value, like Rolex watches, etc. Okay, is there any questions? Okay, so we should be zocher to, I suppose the most important thing about this is we should be zocher to not see the world as a fragmented place, which means to not see the world as a fragmented place means you have to come to a holistic, interdependent internal reality. So we should all be zocher to an interdependent and cohesive internal reality, and then that should be mashpira out into the whole world, and everyone else should chap it, and we should all be zocher to understand that everything is all one, as Rat Hashem. Okay, so I
Baruch, יישר כוח.